Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, now you can hear me? Okay, cool. I don't know what was going on there for a second. I'm using a headset that I don't normally use. It's actually kind of nice because doing this at night, out of, not doing the live show, I just decided to come sit outside because I have all the software on my phone to record the conversation,
Okay, nice.
Yeah. How are you?
Oh, man, I've been better.
Yeah, tell me about it. You got an interesting story. You definitely, I imagine a high property. I appreciate you taking some time to just chat with me a little bit because, with everything that's going on, I mean, you're still just a working man. I apologize. We might have to clear some of that stuff up. Have to have some of those conversations. You are a working woman and a busy individual, so I appreciate your time. I know how valuable it is, and it's a pleasure to get a chance to talk to you. So yeah, tell me about what's going on, and it sounds like it's kind of nasty a little bit, of course, with backlash from the internet and things like that. So yeah, just tell me all about it.
It's generally not really that nasty. Most of the responses I've been getting have been overwhelmingly positive. There's a hell of a lot more support out there than there is hatred. It's true that my car got vandalized. I mean, that's true, but the paint has been removed already. The tire has been replaced, so now it's just a matter of replacing the canvas top, which regrettably is the most expensive part of this, but for the most part, people have been supportive. I mean, not the Republicans here in Cheshire County. They haven't been supported. In fact, I'm starting to hear rumors that they do intend a write-in campaign in the general election. I mean, right, because that was so successful in the primary. So let them do what they want. I mean, if they do that, it will only help me. Because right now, the hardcore Republicans would be voting for Eli Rivera, who is the Democratic candidate, because he's to the right of me. He's more he's more law and order than I am, obviously. So if they don't vote for him, they instead write in Eli Nelson. Well, that's fewer votes for Rivera from people who weren't going to vote for me in the first place. So I'm good with that.
Right. Don't mind being the spoiler at all in that sense, then.
No. So the best thing that could possibly result from this is that I win the sheriff election, and I win by a margin of votes that Earl Nelson got his write-ins. That would be the best thing ever. And who knows? Maybe that'll happen.
Right. I mean, right. Well, I mean, there's still plenty of time to go, and with with some interest around the campaign, obviously, with everything, we'll have to fill all that in. You'll have to tell me exactly how that comes about. There's a lot of labels that are placed before your name. When your name comes up, I also find transgender and Satanist and Anarchist, and that's a lot of titles to live up to.
Yeah, just hold on 1 second. I'm switching to my GPS connected.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay, so what were you saying?
Well, there's a lot of labels that come before your name. You look your name up on the internet, and there's a lot of labels that pop up. There's transgender, there's Satanist, there's Anarchist, there's all these things. How do you live up to all of those names, those titles? Where does it all fit in? How does it even all come together to even be you? How do you get here at this point? What creates you to bring you here to this day, to even just to be able to have those labels?
All right. Well, that was a lot of questions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of think that it's all I assume it's just all you, and that it's all you coming to this point, and that's what I'm getting at. Just who you are and where you're coming from that would make you even want to run for this, and knowing that with all those labels in front of your name, that you're going to have some fun and you're going to have some hard times.
I mean, there's no doubt. That's why those labels are there, right? I could have easily called myself a transgender a transgender atheist voluntarist who won the Republican nomination. But you know what? That wouldn't have gotten international attention in the way that this did. So because I call myself an anarchist instead of voluntarist, because I call myself a she-male rather than trans, and because I call myself a Satanist instead of an atheist, that got people's attention. And when you combine that, when you juxtapose that with wins GOP nomination for sheriff, people cannot help but look. So that's what they're going to be facing in this write-in campaign, and it's true. You know, I'm running as Republicans, and Republicans are all about law and order. But you know what? The Republicans here in New Hampshire are a peculiar bunch. There are a lot of them that genuinely just want to leave people alone. They genuinely want small government because they want to be left alone. And they understand that government's messing with me, it's messing with them.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few Republicans, a few actual Republicans here in Cheshire County who intend to vote for me in in November, knowing that I'm a Satanist transgender atheist anarchist. And Cheshire County is unusual in that it's probably the most left-leaning of any of the counties in New Hampshire. That's because we have Keene, which is this nice, quaint little college town that is thoroughly under Democratic control. You can't get elected here as anything else. Republicans can't even get an entire ballot field here, which, by the way, is how I got the Republican nomination. Republicans here in Keene are basically dead. Republicans in Cheshire County are basically dead.
Huh. And so it's not a case of like the Republicans are feeling like they've been tricked or anything like that. They're just not really present there, and you just use that to your advantage.
Well, I mean, there are Republicans here. I mean,
sure.
4,000 primary to vote for me. I don't know what the population of Cheshire County is, but I know that the population of Keene is about 24,000 if you include the college. I mean, it's not a large town by any means. And it's the largest town in Keene. The rest of them are significantly smaller. So I don't know. The population may be 50,000 in total. So it's not a huge portion of the population that went and voted in the Republican primary in the first place.
Sure.
But out of that percentage of people, like 80% of them seem to have blindly voted for me. And I didn't hide anything from them. All they had to do was Google my name, and they would have found out everything they needed to know about me. Because even prior to all of this, you could Google my name and get results because I've been doing libertarian activism for the last 2 years here in New Hampshire. This isn't my first run for sheriff. They would have seen all of this. Oh, she's actually a libertarian anarchist hijacking the Republican Party. Oh, well, we don't want to vote for her. Oh, she's a Satanist. She started the Reformed Satanic Church. We don't want to vote for her. They would have seen all of this. They just couldn't be bothered. So sure, a lot of them do feel betrayed because they can't take responsibility for what they did. They're the ones that voted for me. They want to blame me for this. Dude, I was upfront about who I am and what I'm doing. Could not possibly have been more upfront. Right there, who is Aria DiMezzo? It very snidely makes the point very clear that I'm a libertarian anarchist hijacking the Republican Party. It makes that 100% clear. I can't help it that they didn't go to my campaign website and read, and this was the main story, and this was the only book that had. That's the only thing they would have seen there. I can't help it they didn't go to my campaign site, my official campaign site, to find out anything about me, much less even just Googling my name. So they feel betrayed. Sure, I get it, but I wasn't the one who betrayed them. The system was who betrayed them by convincing them that it was okay to close their eyes and just blindly vote for candidates.
Beautifully put. I mean, they're fooling themselves, and they're fooling themselves into believing that their system is better than it is, and that they can take this idea of voting and this idea of democracy for granted. Absolutely. What would you do? What do you do if you win?
I'll be the sheriff if I win.
You'll be the sheriff.
No, I will allow my deputies. I will actually require my deputies to respond to reports of crimes that actually have a victim, right? If someone's property is being vandalized, if they're under attack, if they have a stalker, yes, the police, if we're going to have them, and we can't go through the whole, we don't have time right now to go through the whole system. How would an actual anarchist society handle that? We don't have that right now. What we have is what we have. And what we have is the sheriff's department. So yes, my deputies will respond to crimes where there's actually a victim. And this includes the police, meaning that by and large, 99% of the victims of harassment, extortion, kidnapping in the United States are victims of being kidnapped, extorted, harassed by police. Because that's what it really is when the police pull you over. They're harassing. We just turn a blind eye to it because they're part of this state religious apparatus that guards itself in all of these religious drapings that make us think, oh, okay, no, it's because it's not really extortion. It's you're being fined because you weren't a fine, upstanding, obedient citizen of the state. You failed at your religious duties to be loyal to the state, so we're fining you. You have to pay an extra tithe this week. But it's ultimately extortion. It's just kidnapping when they take you against your will and they put you in a cell and won't let you leave. That's kidnapping.
Did you see that, was it out of Idaho this week, that video that came out of the guy shooting the two cops that had pulled him over?
I have not seen that.
I hadn't seen that. Yeah, you have to look that one up. It's making the rounds right now, of course. And the question is, was he justified in doing it? And no, most people don't go back to the core reason that they were there in the first place. They stop at he refuses a so-called lawful order. Nobody wants to go back and have the conversation about, well, why did they pull him over in the first place? He didn't damage anybody's property. He didn't hurt anybody. Why are the cops involving themselves in anybody's business when they're not invited?
In the grand scheme of things, he probably did not fail to obey a lawful order.
Oh, yeah, cool. Yeah, he did. He absolutely failed. They told him many, many times, but under their terms, yeah, he definitely failed to obey their lawful commands, you bet.
It's not lawful. It's probably unconstitutional for the police to have the authority to give people commands for crimes that aren't taking place that involve victims.
Yeah.
It's probably constitutional. We'll find out when I see the sheriff, because the first thing I'm going to do is hire a really good constitutional attorney, because I'm going to land in constant hot water.
Yeah.
Well, of course. I mean, I've made it clear that I will arrest war criminals, because war criminals have created a lot of victims. And this includes Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Barack Obama. If any of these people come to Cheshire County,
that's great.
I don't know what the hell to fall out. I don't care if he's the president of the United States. If Donald Trump comes to Cheshire County, Sheriff DiMezzo is putting him under arrest. And I can right now exactly how that's going to play out. But hey, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, right. Well, you got to become sheriff first, and then you got to get the president to come there. That's what happens.
The point with the threat is to keep him the hell out.
Right.
You're not welcome. You're a war criminal. We don't want war criminals here. Stay the hell out.
Wow, it's great to hear somebody say that. And what you're talking about is being a so-called constitutional sheriff, where you would actually uphold the values of the Constitution, the ideas that framed our law here, which was that individuals were innocent until proven guilty, and that they weren't even guilty of something if there was no damage to a person or property, and that there was no claim, a legitimate claim by an actual victim brought before the state to have them adjudicate for you.
Yep. I'm not a fan of the Constitution at all. I'm not a fan of the state, or the republic, so I'm not a fan of the document that produced it. However, that's probably about the extent of things. I think that's the most good that I could achieve, is by abiding the Constitution. I think that if I were to go in there and say, no, I'm abolishing the sheriff's department, you can buy a gun if you want to protect yourself, I think by doing that and by declining to even be sheriff, I would be doing more harm to the reputations of libertarians and anarchists in general, because I'm not campaigning to do that, and I don't think campaigning to do that would actually help garner a few more headlines, but all of the headlines and the attention on this, it's going to go away by probably the end of next week. No one else will pay attention to it again unless I win, or unless something really major happens, like someone burns down my house or whatever.
Jeez, don't say that. Don't give them any ideas. No, I don't know anybody. I don't really think. I would hope that wouldn't really happen. I think would hope that we're beyond some of that in this point in society. But the problem there wouldn't be any of those necessary prefixes or labels before your name. It would just be the fact that they're statists, and statists have this thing where when you don't agree with them, they murder you, or they at least hire their state to do it for them.
Yep.
So you could actually become the sheriff, and this is a point that I think is important to make when having these conversations with some of our libertarian, anarchist, voluntarist friends, whatever the label happens to be on them. This idea of watching the whole thing burn, or even participating in it in that sense, when if you just take a look back at the things that were in place at the founding of the nation, that they really had some great ideas, and that it actually took a little while before they usurped the power from the people, before they turned people into citizens. There was a time in this nation where people lived pretty free.
Well, it wasn't a very long time. You got to remember, President George Washington led the National Guard, led the Army. I think it was. I don't remember what. I guess it was just the Army then. Led them to fight the whiskey rebellion against whiskey producers who refused to pay taxes. So I mean, the tyranny was very, very early.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely been there all along, but there was at least some, certainly before I think the Constitution comes along. There was that, and then I think you had this period not too long after the Constitution. I look at it this, the Constitution is framed and accepted, and then they come along and with an afterthought they go, oh hey, you know what, we ought to protect the people, so let's create this Bill of Rights thing. And the Bill of Rights is actually a pretty good statement about protecting the individual from overreach of government. It was a pretty decent idea, except until you put it on paper. But then by the time you get to the next amendment, people become citizens. You lose your standing as a sort of native sovereign individual.
But yeah, I mean, that wasn't entirely how it played out. There were a lot of states that refused to ratify the Constitution.
Oh, sure.
Unless the Bill of Rights was going to be immediately ratified after.
Right. Yeah, and that was it. It was a bit of a compromise and everything. But I think unfortunately, right as you started to say that, is when we lost a connection there. And my greater point was that there's sort of a legal. You can watch the wording, and you can watch the importance of the individual disappear in our founding documents. If you look at the Bill of Rights, they are literally written for the people. The word people is used, and then by the time you get to the 11th, the next, not out of the original, but the next amendment that they actually passed, people become citizens. The word people is gone, and citizens have been replaced. So your status as a natural human being, as an individual, and not a function, a citizen, a creation of the state, is already laid forth way back then.
Yeah, it's not surprising.
Yeah. Well, it's just one of those things that when we have some of these deeper conversations, someone like yourself who actually apparently has some actual historical knowledge and maybe a little bit of legal understanding of the way our nation was framed, and at least the ideas behind it. You can try to make that argument that we don't have to necessarily throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Sure. I mean, I would prefer to get rid of the entire government, right?
Right, but you said like you said yourself, most people probably aren't ready for it, and so there must be at least some effort, some transition away from it, and that's what this effort is.
Yeah, I think that if we were to, like, if the state just vanished tomorrow, I mean, we would just end up with a new state in its place, because people right now, they've been so conditioned by the government for generations that they're legitimately terrified of freedom. They want someone to rule over them. So we get, regrettably, I think we do have to take, I think the least painful path for humanity is to take it a little bit slower. And so let's try it out here in this county. Let's try going all the way back to just victim crimes, just crimes that actually have victims, and reining in the police once and for all, not allowing them to pull people over for busted tail lights. If you pull over someone for not having their headlights on, the extent of your interaction with them should be to inform them that their headlights aren't on and tell them to have a good night.
Yeah, do them a favor, and actually, this one, again, looking back at these documents, there's particular language, and it's really important. I think that language is important, and that it has a certain meaning in a certain place and time, and that's language that goes back a long way, just like the word person before being, or the word people before being changed to a citizen, and it has different meaning, and what they said was that government was supposed to promote the general welfare, that it could take the idea to me seems that it would take what little power it had, what little presence it had within a community, and it would say, you know what, we think that these things that people are doing and these suggestions that these people have come up with over here, that maybe it's a good idea to have lights on your car when you drive around, And if yours is broken, maybe we'll let you know.
It shouldn't be a legal requirement, and people who have served in the Middle East in the military have informed me of this, that it's not unusual for vehicles out in the Middle East to just drive around without their headlights on. Well, we have so much light pollution here that, we're not getting the starlight that they are. So we sort of need them here because, there's light pollution everywhere. But yes, it is generally a good idea. It shouldn't be a law. If you want to drive around with your headlights off, you should have that right. You're going to crash and die, but there shouldn't be a law protecting the stupid people from themselves. If they want to drive, and sure, I get it. That person driving around without their headlights on, they may cause an accident with someone. They may hit someone else and kill them too. But they won't ever drive with their headlights off again.
No, they won't. If they ever drive at all, if they survive through it, and if their proxies, if their insurance, if the things that they have in place actually protect them, and they've made the right market choices in those decisions. Of course, you can't. It's almost impossible to do now because of that the good old government intervention.
Yeah, but the bigger concern is that people are like, okay, but then someone just died because they were driving around without their headlights on. We had a law in place. We had police going around making sure that didn't happen. And now Sheriff Aria came along and bumped that up. That would be the response. Even though, the rational response would be something along the lines of, yes, but having the police here pulling people over and then giving people DUIs, even though they were fine to drive, they just forgot to turn their headlights on, but then the cops smelled alcohol in their breath next to the field sobriety test. Maybe they slurred a little bit, or maybe they missed a step. Someone enough to try, but people are clumsy. And I've seen this happen repeatedly, or where they get pulled over for forgetting to turn their headlights on. Next thing you know, their vehicles getting searched by a canine unit.
Well, the incident that I mentioned earlier, that's what it was. It was a driving incident. Of course, it's the pretext. It's the largest pretext. There's actually gosh, I don't have it off the top of my head. I'll have to make sure to add a link to it on the page that goes with this. Just a story not too long ago from a buddy of mine, Bradley Thomas, who has compiled all this information about sort of 80% of every single police interaction is something to do with a victimless crime, and that the majority of those are on the street. And of course they knew this guy. He didn't know. They knew from a previous stop that he had some potential record, and that maybe they might find something on him. So they knew they had themselves a catch no matter what. And it went too far, and he ended up, I believe he killed both of the cops. After they eventually tased and pepper sprayed him in the face, and then wrestled with him for quite a while. He held off for quite a while before he finally pulled the firearm out of his waistband, I guess. I mean, they had a hold of him, and then he fired off several shots at both of them.
Well, I can't comment on that. I haven't seen any.
Yeah, you have to go see it.
Yeah. But it's not uncommon for the cops to do exactly that. I mean, they pull you over and they search your car for weed. Like, I open carry, and they know that. Are they going to just assume that I'm going to be hostile and come out with their guns drawn? I don't know. Probably not here in Cheshire County, because they also know I'm way more level-headed than that. But they don't know me that well in Massachusetts, where they're going to know I open carry pretty soon, because an article is getting published tomorrow, and you can just see me right there with a pistol on my hip. How are the Massachusetts cops going to react when they pull me over? It's stupid. We shouldn't be terrified of the police. They should be terrified of us. But it's completely backwards. Any interaction with police is almost certainly going to be bad for the person. These are the people who quote serve and protect us, and yet I don't know anyone who is really ever happy they interacted with the police. I've had some neutral interactions with the police where I called them about something, a break-in many years ago, and they came out and they filed a report, and that was it. I can't really call that a positive interaction because nothing got accomplished, but it's a neutral interaction. That's the best reaction you can get from police. They're not under serving. They have no obligation to protect. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that repeatedly. Yeah. Like the cop in Florida who ran and hid during the school shooting. The Supreme Court said, hey, that's fine. He had no obligation to protect children. They don't have any obligation. Everyone believes that the cops are there to serve and protect us, but that's the opposite of what they're doing. They're serving us and protecting us. They're serving us with papers and protecting us only when we're in jail. And sometimes they don't even do that. They used to have contests in the Manchester jail about breaking people's arms. There are underground secret societies and many police stations in California where you get initiated by breaking an inmate's bone or by shooting it.
It's like I saw an article about this here just recently. It's been really big news that it's uncovered that there are actual literal police gangs that run around and it's called Chasing Ink. They're trying to get their kill tattoo, like the teardrop for the gangsters, and they're literally acting like the scum they say they're protecting us from.
Yeah, I mean they are the scum. I'm not nearly as worried about getting harassed on the street by a random citizen or by a random hater as I am being harassed by the police. I've been harassed by the Peter King. They and state troopers spent about 6 months stalking me, trying to pull me over, and I kept ducking. I have witnesses. There were many. This is documented. There were many people who stalled it. And it was intense because there were times where I would just have to pull into a parking lot, park my car there, call like Ian Freeman or something, like, hey man, I gotta leave my car because I need you to get me right home because they're right behind me. This state trooper whipped around, did an illegal turn on Main Street because he saw me leaving work, got behind me, and before he could pull me over, I pulled into the parking lot of the nearest gas station I parked there. So what did he do? He pulled in across the other side of the street, he turned around so that he could see me, and just sat there.
Mm-hmm.
It took him more than an hour to respond to my message because he's a big guy. It took him more than an hour to respond to my message to come and pick me up, and the state trooper was still sitting there waiting on me to leave. As soon as Ian picked me up and I got in the car with him, Ian brought me home just fine. The state trooper was gone because he knew that he wasn't going to be able to pull me over that time.
Yeah.
And there were dozens of witnesses to this type of behavior. This kind of crap went on for 6 months until they finally got me. They finally pulled me over. That's where my Twitter cover photo comes from.
Nah.
Because going to happen eventually, so we're all ready for it. I opened up Cell 41 that I just pulled over, and the next thing I know, here's Ian and Matt with their freaking video cameras. Not blocking. It was great. Got some really good footage that night, but it was absurd, and that was 6 months of targeted stalking.
You know, they're actually hunting you. They're trying to score some points on you. And it's great you mentioned Cell 411. I don't know if everybody knows what that is, but it's an app. It's right here next to the app that on my phone on the screen that I'm using to record this conversation. I have Cell 411, and I'm able to take that and program people's numbers, and it's like a panic button, and I can hit that, and it'll instantly let people know that I'm under arrest. It's really cool. It has a bunch of different features. I love that program.
It's wonderful. I'm really happy. I did an interview with Issues Magazine Sunday night at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I've been crazy busy lately. And I got the opportunity to plug Cell 411 to them. They'd never heard of it before. They're like, that actually sounds fantastic. That sounds like a really good solution to all this. I'm like, yes, you can find it at cell411.com. It's also on the Google Play Store, the iOS. Tell people about it. It's freaking wonderful. As soon as you get pulled over, pop open Cell 411, hit notify your friends or whatever, and then immediately start recording, because it will stream to your YouTube channel, stream to your Facebook, and it will stream to Cell 411's Facebook. So even if they take your phone and they break it, it still got streamed out.
It's already hit the internet. It's already in the cloud, and it actually goes. Am I mistaken in this or not? It actually goes to Cell 411 servers potentially to be analyzed, by legal analysis if need be. Is that right? Do they have a cloud storage and it's secure? Like the cops can't delete it from your phone.
I do not know.
Yeah, I think it's something like that. I may not have it quite right, but it's a great program at any rate for anybody that's never heard of it.
I know the guy who made Cell 411. His name is Virgil. I can contact him and ask him and shoot you an email when I get the response from him.
Yeah, it'd be kind of cool just to follow up on it at some point to let him know. Besides, if you know him, maybe I can get him to come visit the show and I can get him to have a conversation.
He's pretty burned out. I mean, he didn't even do anything when Cell 411 was pulled from the Google Play stores or the iOS stores because it was no longer compatible with the latest version of Android.
Yeah.
And it was that he passed the code to who updated it to make it compatible. So he's burned out. He's done. He may be willing to answer a question or two, but as far as like maybe an interview, I don't see it.
Yeah, he's not gonna have a conversation. I understand this stuff is pretty rough on some people, especially if you tend to make some waves at all. It can be pretty tiring, because it's sort of a nonstop barrage, isn't it? Because every direction you turn, every sort of corner you look at society, and there's this manipulation by this dark cloud called government, and it's just so. It just seeps into everything we do, and it's so you wanted to shower and wash it off constantly. Just, get it off of me.
Yeah, I mean, and I know the fact that with all of the running around I'm doing right now, I'm grateful that this is temporary. A lot of people are like, your ego's going to seriously deflate when all of this goes. When I know this is going to go. The fact that this is going to stop within the next week or two is the only thing keeping me going. If I thought that this was going to last several more months, dude, I would probably blow my brains out.
Yeah, the pressure of the whole thing. What if it doesn't stop? What if you win the thing?
The pressure is the problem. I'm better under pressure than when I'm not under pressure. So the pressure isn't an issue. The issue is that their headlights aren't on. When did they know that?
Cop creeping.
Yeah, the issue is that my time is limited, and I'm constantly being pulled in. This is the 5th interview that I've done today.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Oh, boy.
And tomorrow I've got a Russian news agency with almost 150 million regular viewers.
Oh, boy. Is that RT?
No, it's not RT. It's a different one. It's REN, REN. I had never heard of them prior to this, but apparently, according to them, I'm very famous in Russia right now. So don't tell the Republicans that I'm meeting with Russians for. I don't think they could handle it.
That's great. It's a conspiracy, and you heard it here first.
Right now, somebody called in and said, you're like the face of libertarianism right now, and I was like, well, that's not true. I'm a face of the Republican Party right now, and that's better because that's a mind fuck for everyone. But it's true. The only Republican probably more talked about right now than I is Donald Trump.
Mm. Well, and that's good. I mean, if you think about it, because how special are any of those particular labels in front of your name if you're just another libertarian?
Yep.
Well,
if I had run as a Democrat or a libertarian, none of this would be happening right now. And I know that for a fact because I ran as a libertarian candidate for sheriff 2 years ago. The union leader covered it, then, but Fox News didn't pick it up. The Sun didn't pick it up. The Daily Mail didn't pick it up. The Hill didn't pick it up. None of these major news outlets picked it up. It was stuck just in New Hampshire, which is fine. I'm not complaining about that. That was still statewide coverage. But because it was as a Republican, and I was trans then too. I was an Everett then too. I was a Satanist then. But none of that made headlines because it was, okay, a libertarian did a thing. I mean, libertarians do that. Okay, it happened. Now let's move on. But oh no. This time, I really shook some shit up.
That's great. I mean, if there's anything that you're going to do playing around with the political system, see, I try to keep a level head about everything, and that includes this idea of anarchists not being able to vote, or that it's some sort of violation of the NAP or some other sort of non-aggression type principle. I don't believe that that's true. What I do believe that's true is that for the most part your vote is statistically useless, and that it could possibly be a violation of some NAP or something like that, if depending on the specifics of the detail. But just to say to go out and vote, I mean, they're going to go and vote, and they're doing it without you. So you can always make that argument that you're voting to be a spoiler, or that you're voting to make your point. I mean, there have been others that have come along the way and done it. The argument that you can change the system from the inside is moot if you have a platform and you affect lives and you change the actual lives. To hell with the system. Ron Paul's a perfect example of this. 30 years in Congress, in government, didn't change a damn thing, but absolutely did create more people like yourself, like myself.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of, voting, they say that voting is aggression, right? That's not true. That's like saying that having a gun is aggression. Right. The act of voting in and of itself does not cause aggression. If the person that you're voting for intends to commit aggression, then it's an act of aggression. It's like shooting a gun isn't an act of aggression, but shooting a gun at a person is an act of aggression. Okay, so voting is an act of aggression, but voting for someone who you know is going to create victims is an act of aggression. But voting in and of itself, that's not a problem.
Right.
I vote for my ballot here in Cheshire County, New Hampshire, has 5 voluntarists on it. 5 actual, dyed-in-the-wool, hardcore voluntarists.
Wow.
No other state can say that.
No.
We have a huge libertarian presence here in New Hampshire, and we're trying to get more people here because I would love for every person on the ballot to be a volunteer.
Wow, what a novel idea, huh?
We already have 5 just in this in New Hampshire. 5 different volunteers, all for different, and that was just my ballot. There are different wards and different. I don't know how they slice it up, but there were dozens throughout just Cheshire County, dozens of volunteers and libertarians.
Well, does this all fall into I never followed it much, never paid too much attention to it, but the Free State project thing? Is that some of that? A bunch of people purposely sort of moved to an area? Is that what's going on?
Well, it was the idea that if we could find a suitable state with a low population,
right,
we could move 20,000 libertarians there, and then we could actually have an impact on how things were going. We could make it more libertarian. It was a colossal failure. I have no affiliation whatsoever with the Free State Project. I don't know why I keep getting alleged to be affiliated with it, but they fucking hate me.
Why is it? Have you guys butted heads before? Is that what that is?
It's because we do things like run Transgender Satanist Anarchist for a sheriff, make international headlines, and they don't.
They're not trying to make waves. They're trying to.
A lot of them are now running as Republicans, and they're taking sort of the Rand Paul approach, right? Where they do have some libertarian leanings, but they're not libertarian. Like Ron Paul does. They're Rand Paul style.
Which is nothing like his father.
Quote, libertarian, end quote. And that's largely what comprises the Free State Project. They don't like me one bit.
That's too bad, because I mean, it's not like there's any reason to be at odds. That's for sure. What are you going to do? That's what happens when you have the middle of the road party sort of agreement. All the disenfranchised from everywhere else. They already don't agree with the place they're coming from, and so what's to make it? Get a whole bunch of people that are disagreeable already and get them all together and try to agree on something.
Yeah, I don't even think it's that, though. I think it's just Keene is a special place. We have, if you're an anarchist and you come to New Hampshire, you're probably going to end up in Keene, because this is where these hardcore activists happen. This is where we go out every Friday night at midnight and we drink and smoke weed in the middle of Central Square, violating governor's orders, not wearing masks, not just opening bottles of wine, bottles of alcohol, taking shots right there in Central Square, smoking weed every Friday night, and the cops drive by. They make it a point not to look at us, and it's because we've been doing this kind of crap for so long. They know, and we've been making headlines doing it. They know it's not worth it to try to take us to court over it, because they know we'll fight it, we'll drag it out, we'll make them fight for every little inch they get, and ultimately we'll win.
That's it. You stumbled on a big thing right there, and it's something that so much of what they get away with is because people don't fight back, and because people can't and don't know how to stand up for themselves in the legal system, and they don't realize that when most of us probably don't even get to hire necessarily a private attorney or something like that, but when they go and they get an attorney from the state, that these people work under the state's laws, and they work within the state's laws, and they all but work for the state in that sense. And so there's nobody ever really on your side to advocate for you if you don't advocate for yourself and you don't stand up for these things yourself.
Absolutely. One of these events, we've never been targeted by police there since nightcap returned at the start of COVID. Like the night the governor's orders went into effect here that you could gather in groups of more than 10, that was the night we started back nightcap. They told us we couldn't do a thing, so we started doing a thing, even though we had gotten burned out on nightcap years ago. I wasn't even here then, and stopped doing it. Well, it came back because the government said we couldn't do it. And they left us alone except for one night, which we assume it was initiation of a new cop. Because we had never seen it before. They gave us parking tickets. Apparently, you're not allowed to be parked on Main Street between the hours of 2 and 6 a.m.
Mm.
Everyone who contested those parking tickets got them thrown out. All they had to do was go by the courthouse and say, I want a court date for this. Court attendant threw the case out, because the parking ticket cost is $15. That's the cost of the fine. So even if they go through all of the court crap, the most they're going to get from us is $15. If they can even find a way to find us guilty. And they know from experience that this is going to take hours upon hours is we're going to drag it out. We're going to make it as painful as possible for them to get that $15 from us until finally they give up. It's not a matter of that $15. It's a matter of principle.
Yeah.
All you do is stand up and fight the system. But most people, they just pay their parking ticket, they carry on. But no, stop paying the tickets. Fight them. More often than not, you will win. I've always been told that, but I never believed it. It just sounded like conspiracy nonsense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you need a speeding ticket, you should fight it. Because the cop probably won't even show up for court and all of these other reasons. I never believed it. I was like, there's no way it's that easy, but it really is that easy.
You know how many times people, the reason people lose to the state and is because they don't show up. They just don't show up. They don't show up for the court date. Then there's a warrant, and then it becomes a different, it becomes a different problem. You've violated one of their little codes or laws, and not just a simple sort of misdemeanor ticket. Now they've got you in their sights, but so many times you can cut them off before it ever gets there. If you just stand up for yourself, and people don't do it anymore. I watch it. I'm old enough. I'm almost 50 now, so I'm old enough that I've been through the court system any number of times over the years, and I've watched it change. There was a time when you could, in my time, still reasonably make an appearance in court by yourself and come out of it on the good side, and that's changed in my time. There's no chance, not if you don't know, you know.
In a lot of these cases, there still is a chance, right? But because most of this is going to be like speeding tickets and stupid nonsense like that.
Mm.
All people have to do is go in there and request a trial, or to say that they're pleading not guilty to the speeding ticket or to the parking ticket or whatever, and that they want a trial, and the judge will just throw out the ticket because it's not worth their time. It's going to cost them hundreds of dollars per hour to have the courtroom there dealing with your stupid fucking ticket.
Well, and what'll happen is the judge intercedes, and they go through all this process of telling you, oh, well, I'm not a lawyer, I can't represent you, and I can't give you legal advice. But the first thing out of their mouth when you plead not guilty to one of those things is, well, you realize what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to file all this paperwork, and you're going to have to voir a jury, and you're going to have to go through all this process. And he starts reading, and all of a sudden he becomes this person who can offer me legal advice.
I have never encountered any of that with testing tickets and requesting trials. I've never had a judge tell me that I would have to do some sort of paperwork to plead not guilty.
You've never heard that particular storyline before? Oh, wow. Maybe they just never went that far. They didn't even really want to push it that far. Yeah, I've heard that story before. Well, oh, yes. Well, you realize that you're pleading not guilty means that you're going to have to go through and you have to pay to set up the jury, and you have, then you have to go through all this process and just basically trying to discourage you from taking that fight. Yeah. What's that?
I know they encourage people to just plead guilty, but I've never heard them lie like that.
Oh, yeah. No. Well, you haven't had the opportunity then yet. Maybe that's one of those things that you haven't done, haven't come across in your activism, getting to go just sit in on some people's trials and things like that. And I've done a little bit of it. It was a big thing with us in Denver, running, anytime somebody get in trouble, it's like, all right, call out the posse, everybody show up, and they could be showing in the courtroom. And we've heard the most ridiculous stuff over the years, I tell you. Listen, it's been wonderful talking to you. I can't keep you any longer. I'm sure you've got stuff to do, and I have a show that I have to edit this all in to fit time in between commercials and stuff like that, but I really, really appreciate it. It's been great talking to you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.